In this tutorial, I'll be covering how I modeled this IKEA watering can. It's a picture of the existing product. So to get started, I'll open up a new part, Control N for new, and I'm going to be modeling in inches. And I will start by inserting a sketch picture onto the right plane. And this is the right view picture. It's 13 inches tall. I'll uncheck lock aspect ratio because I need to make it 13.5 wide, which is the actual dimensions. And then I'll change the transparency to 0.4 so I can see my sketch lines over the picture and label it side photo. And then I'm going to import on the top plane my top picture, and I'll select this picture here, and this is 3.3 inches tall, and then unlock the aspect ratio and make it 2.92, which is the actual width. I'll copy and paste this dimension into the X, divide that by 2, and put a minus sign in front to center it. And then I'm also going to make the Y location 6.22, which will place it right where it needs to be. Now I gotta add image transparency as well to this. I'll label this as bottom photo. Then I'm going to sketch on the front plane and insert my front view. And this is also 13 inches tall. Go from a front view here. And I'll unlock the aspect ratio and change that to 4.92 for the width. And then copy and paste that, divide that by 2, put a minus sign in front to center it, increase that to 0.4 on image transparency, and label that as front photo. Okay, then I'm going to create a new plane that I'm going to call height, and that's 13 inches from the top plane, so I'll call this height. And then also make a depth plane, so control drag plane and get 13.5 inches on the depth, call this depth. And then on the height plane, I'm going to make a new sketch picture, insert the top picture, and this is 13.5 inches tall, and then unlock the aspect ratio, enter again 4.92, which is the actual width, and if I remember from last time, I think it's minus 2.46, and then under the image transparency 0.4, and I'll label this top photo. That makes it easy for me to show and hide the necessary photos. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this. It's always good to save after every few features. Pick my revision number. So to get started, I'm going to sketch on the right plane, and I'm going to make a spline starting at the height and kind of just tracing along this profile here. It's okay if you don't get it exact. We're going to just tweak things, double click to and hit escape to get out of the spline creation control. So I can control these here and get it close. Okay. Alright, now if you want to, you can do subtle movements with display control polygon. You can see that this will move things subtly. Now if you want even more control, like if I click on this vertice, you have two vertices right here, control polygons, but if I move this arm, it'll add 2 more. So you can see it added another. Now I can make very subtle movements. So if I want to add one here, I just click on the vertice, it shows the arms. You can see one here, and if I move it now, it'll create one on either side. So this allows for some subtle control. And this guy I gotta fix up here. Okay, and I'm gonna go let's check this. Okay, that looks good. And I'll just tweak this a little bit. Okay, great. So I'm gonna label this as main spline because we'll be using the spline quite a bit through the modeling of this. And I'm going to create a midplane, kind of a midplane through this whole thing at 7.875 inches. And then I'm going to sketch on the top plane and working on this main body part first. So we have to make some guide curves. I'm going to hide the top photo so that I can just see the bottom profile. And I'm just going to click and create a spline. I'll hit escape to end the spline creation. And make sure that these are horizontal, these arms are horizontal. Adding some relations. Exit out of that. And then I'm going to again draw on the right plane. Let's sketch, and I'll draw some splines, and I'll get just close. I'll use the computer, I'll use Solidworks to pierce that later. So I'm just gonna get close here. There's a little bit of an S inflection, so I'm using more spline points than just 2, because it kind of has a little bit of an S shape. So I'll go back here and I'll pierce these two together by holding control. Endpoint always pierces, always point and curve. And let's see if this is it's pretty good. I'm gonna move this over just a little bit. Okay, that looks good. Exit out of that sketch. Make a new sketch on the right plane. And I'll make another sketch. And I'll get pretty close, but I won't actually touch it. And again, maybe making 4. Escape to end the spline creation. Up here, hit the control, hold down control, select the endpoint and the curve, hit pierce, and then just make any minor adjustments here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Exit out of that sketch. And then from the front, I'm sorry, not the front, on the height, I'll sketch on the height plane, and I'll show my top photo again. This time I'm gonna start on the right plane and kind of trace its outer shape. I'll hit escape and add horizontal constraints. Then I'm going to make this endpoint coincident to the endpoint of the spline that I just drew, and also with these endpoints. These are the splines that I just drew, and I'm gonna just make sure that those line up by making both of those coincident. So from the top plane, top view, I'll adjust this, and I'll go ahead and use my display control polygon here, and I'll move this arm so I have a little bit more control. You can see another polygon point showed up there, and tweak this out a little bit. Move this arm, this will give me, and I'll move this arm as well. This will also give me another control vertex. Okay. Basically I'm wanting to trace the outside shape here. Okay. It's pretty close. Exit out of that, and it's still selected because it's a blue. I'm just going to hold down Control and select the main spline, and I'll make a projected curve from it. So I've got my one projected curve, and now I have the curves necessary to make this main body. So I'm going to go to Surfaces. If you don't have the Surfaces tab up, you'll have to right-click on it and make sure Surface is checked. I'll click on Boundary Surface, and I'll start with this spline and go over to the second one, and then I'm going to add my second direction, these guides here. Oh, I almost forgot. Well, let's stop that for a second. I'll X out of that. I needed a third profile. So on plane number 3, I'm going to sketch, and I'm going to make another spline. Escape to exit out of the spline creation. I'll click on the projected curve and this endpoint, holding the Control button down so I can pierce them. I'll pierce this down here as well. And from a front view, I'll try to match this shape. So I'll just move this arm out to match the curvature. Okay, great. Now I have the curves necessary. Okay, so I'll go back to Boundary Surface. I'm going to go 1, 2, and 3, and then I'll add my guides. So these two are direction 2. And then what's nice about the Boundary Surface is that you can do the normal to profile right on screen as opposed to the sidebar here. So I'm going to put normal to profile on these two edges because they'll be mirrored over. We want to make sure that they don't have any creases. So that's good. And then I'm gonna just make another. I'll open up the Boundary Surface and hit plus on the curve. I just want to make sure that my main spline is shown because I'm going to be utilizing that, but I can hide this projected curves because I don't need it. So I'll hide that, but my main spline will still remain shown. And I can just close this up a little bit. And then from a right view, I want to create a plane. So I'm going to create a plane, and I'm going to click on the endpoint of the main spline and the spline itself, which will create a plane that is normal to it. This is nice because if I wanted to change the curvature of this spout, the plane will also change along with it. I'm going to use this angled plane and make another one. I'll hold the Control button and I'll click drag the plane till about this intersection down here, which I'll just make it a nice even 7.5. And then I'll use the plane itself to trim this excess off this. So I'll go to Trim and click Standard. Excuse me. I'll use this as the trim tool, and I'll keep this portion. And then on the right plane, I'm going to sketch another spline, and I'm going to get close here, and I will just get close, and then I'll adjust it. So I'll escape to end the spline creation. I'll make sure that this endpoint is pierced to that curve, and I'm going to make sure that this endpoint is coincident to that, as well as coincident to the front. So it's coincident both to the angled plane and to the front plane. Then I'm going to make sure that this edge here and this curve are curvature continuous. Okay, that's good. Maybe make any minor adjustments. Okay, looks fine. And then I am going to from a top view, I'm going to hide this bottom photo temporarily. And I'm going to sketch on the height plane. And I'm going to trace this kind of outside shape. And then I'm going to make sure that I hit escape to end the spline creation. I'm going to make this endpoint coincident to this corner here. So coincident. And I'm going to make this endpoint not coincident to this because it'll jump over there. I'm going to make it horizontal. So that will line up the two sketches. Now I'm going to make also this line tangent to this edge. Or I can make it curvature continuous. So I'll click on this line, make it curvature continuous. So the difference between curvature continuous and tangent is curvature continuous is a little bit better continuity. Curvature continuity. Now if I want to adjust it, I'm going to do my display control polygon. I'll add another control vertex by moving this arm around. And just move this in. And kind of adjust this one. Okay. Good. Alright, now I can project the two curves. So I have this one's pre-selected in blue, and I'll hold the control button down and select the main spline again and project curve. You can see it creates a spline right where I need it to connect to this surface. I'll hit check. And on plane 4, the angled plane, I'm going to create another spline. And I'll go to this point and I'll just double click once, click twice. And I'll make this one nice by clicking on this endpoint and holding control. I'll click the projected curve that I just created. And then I'm going to make a horizontal relation here. And that looks about the shape of the spout, which is good. I'm going to make sure I add a pierce relation on this as well. Okay, I have the surfaces necessary to make the spout here now, so I'm going to click on boundary surface. I'll click on this first spline, and then I'll click on the projected curve. And then for direction 2, I'll utilize this edge, and I'll make this edge normal to profile. And then this one over here, I'll make it tangent to face. Check. Okay, I'm going to save my work. Control S to save. Always good to save every few features. Okay, now I'm going to, on the right plane, make a sketch. I draw a little line here. And I'm going to draw a line that kind of matches the angle of this. Once I get the angle that I want, I can draw another line, and I can make a perpendicular line there. This is just to make an angled plane. There's many ways to make an angled plane. This is one convenient way. And on this angled plane, I'm going to make a sketch. And I'm going to create this small little profile. So from a top view, I'm going to make these horizontal, and the distance from this spline point to the side, I'll use the smart dimension, this distance to the side plane, and it's 0.22. And I've made them coincident to the little T shape that I had made before, this endpoint coincident and that endpoint coincident. Excuse me. Okay, so now I can hide this T-shape. I don't need that anymore. I have my curve. And I'm going to make another plane though. I'm going to click on this plane 6. I'm going to hold down Control and I'll click drag this plane and dial in 7 inches, which will place the plane right above this handle, and I'm going to pull it out a little bit so I can see it a little bit better, which is where we need it. And then we can begin to make some splines on the right plane. So I'm going to click on the right plane, I'll hit sketch, and I'll just get close. I won't actually touch, I'll use the computer to add my Pierce relationships later. So I just click a couple of these and go up to the plane, and that looks fine. I will pierce this one, so click on that, pierce this, exit out of that sketch, and make a new sketch on the right plane. Make another spline. This time I'm going to get close again, and then also pretty close, but not touching. And then maybe end over here. Okay, so it looks like it's matching pretty good. Now I'm going to make sure to click on the endpoint, hold down Control, select the curve, pierce those. Okay, good. Got to make sure that this curve is not exceeding the depth plane and it's matching the profile, which it is. So I'll exit out of that, and then I'll sketch on this plane 7 that I created, and then I'll create a kind of parabolic shape with the spline, and I'll add some horizontal relations on this arm, on these arms. And I'm going to make sure that these are pierced. So I'll click on this endpoint and this curve, pierce that, endpoint and curve, pierce this as well. And then I'll go from top view again and just make sure that the handle is sitting within this. Okay. I'm just making a guesstimation on the shape, and that's okay for this exercise. Something in the ballpark. Okay, exit out of that, and then I'm going to make another boundary surface. I'll clear the selections here because I want to start with this for the direction 1, and then these two for direction 2, one down here. Okay, and then make sure I have my normal to profile so that when they mirror over it will be nice and smooth. And I'm going to draw on the right plane. I'll just make a sketch. I'm just going to draw a line here at the intersection of like where these two intersect, and maybe draw a line about there. I'm just trying to trap off this excess. So I just made sure that would cut through, and I'm going to exit out of this, and I'm going to trim and keep this portion. Okay. Then I'm going to trim this part. So on the right view, I'm going to make a sketch. And I'm going to draw or I'll just click on this main spline curve again and convert it. So I'll have that. So now I have a converted line. Then I'm going to draw just a straight line. Maybe something about here. Escape, and to get out of that line creation, and I'm going to make a smart dimension between the depth plane and this the line that I just drew at maybe 25 degrees. And then I'll trim the excess off of these two, so now I have a shape to trim off this excess. And maybe I can put a dimension from the top of that line to the top plane, and maybe 8.25. Okay, that's pretty close. So that looks good for now. And I'll use this line now to chop off the excess. So use trim surface, and I'm using this sketch, and what I want to keep is this body here. So again, I'm using this sketch that I just created as my trim tool, and I've selected what I want to keep. Okay, so I have this shape, and then I'm going to make the bridging spline shape. So I'll click on the right plane, I'll hit sketch, and we'll start over here. Maybe add a couple. If you don't want to get it exact, that's fine. I like to use Solidworks to make my pierce relations, so you don't have to get it exact. I'll add my pierce relation here as well. And then I'm going to add some, make sure that it's nice and smooth. So I'm going to make these curvature continuous, and this curvature continuous as well. Okay, that looks pretty close. Exit out of that, and then on the right plane, I'll hit sketch. Oh, not right plane. We already have the right view. I'm sorry. I mean the top, the height plane. So the height plane, I'm going to sketch maybe 3 points. And escape to get out of the spline creation. I'll make this endpoint coincident to this endpoint here, and then this endpoint coincident to this endpoint here. These need to line up so that they'll project properly. Then I'm going to select this edge and then the line and make those also curvature continuous, and then this line and also this line, and make those equal curvature continuous. Then make any minor adjustments. So I'll do display control polygon. If I want an extra couple polygons, I'll move this. Now you can see my extra vertices. I can tweak these. Okay, pretty close. Okay, and we'll exit out of that. And then I can project these curves, so it's already pre-selected in the feature tree, and I'm just going to select my main spline as well, and then make a projected curve, and there you go, it projects right there where we need it. I'll hit check, and I'm going to make a loft. I'm going to loft from this over to my projected curve using these edges as guides. Make sure I have a normal to profile on the start so that it'll mirror nicely. And then for both of these edges, I need them to be tangent to face, which will make them the surfaces smooth. Okay, great. Next I need to cap these off, so I will click on the top plane and make a rectangle larger than everything and make a planar surface. Do the same with the angled plane to block off the spout. planar surface there. I'll make a planar surface on this little guy down here. Just gotta make sure it's large enough to cover over the shapes. And then finally I'll have one in the back. So I'll sketch on the right plane and make a rectangle. Make sure it's bigger than everything. And I'll make a planar surface. Alright. I did hide all types so you can see what I have here. So I need to make one surface that's covering this top. So in order to do that, I'm just going to click on the main spline curve that we've been utilizing throughout this exercise, and I'll just extrude that. And you can pull on this arrow to extend it beyond. We just need it to go beyond this. I'll hide everything again so you can see it a little easier. And what we need to do is to knit these surfaces. So these four surfaces, since these are already edge to edge, they don't need to be trimmed. So I'll knit these first, and Solidworks will make them all as one. When I hit merge entities, I don't need gap control in this case. So this will merge all four of these surfaces into one surface. And then you'll see when I do the mutual trim, click on mutual trim, I'll clear this for a second and draw a rectangle around it. It'll select everything. When I do a mutual trim, you'll see it treats it as one as opposed to four separate surfaces, which is a nice feature. And so I'll often do this if I have any pre-trimmed surfaces. Oh, this one looks like I need to put a horizontal constraint on. Okay. Anyway, I can fix that later. But I'm going to select all the faces that I need. And if you're getting it chopped off a little bit too small, you might need to make this rectangle larger so it encompasses everything. So I'll trim that. Okay. Now this should have, I'm going to fix this. This needed to have a horizontal constraint. This is what happens when you don't put the horizontal constraint on. So I'll go back in here and adjust this curve. Oh, actually I think I had the horizontal constraint, I just didn't add my other guide. Yeah, I just forgot to add that guide. Okay. Make sure my normal to profile is on. Okay. That should be fixed up. Okay. So now we have this. It's still surfaces, so I gotta thicken it. I'll thicken it by selecting the surface trim. Click on create enclosed volume. That will make it solid. I can add some fillets onto these edges here, maybe 40 thousandths, and then I'll shell it. So I'll shell this back, the top, the spout, and even this handle is supposed to have an opening. So let's just make it a, let's go for 75 thousandths. Okay, if it doesn't, okay, actually I did it. Okay, it looks fine. Sometimes if it doesn't give it to you, you might have to go a little bit larger. Let's just try 80 thousandths. I think actually both should be working. Okay, both work fine. Okay. So I'm going to fillet this edge, and 40 thousandths is fine. I'm gonna make sure that it goes all the way to the top, which it does. And then I'm gonna add one more fillet onto the outside edge. This one I'm going to make 20 thousandths. Okay, it's thinking about it. Okay, 20 thousandths. Now if it doesn't travel all the way, okay, see, like it's stopping partial way here. I might need to click a couple other edges so that it will go all the way up. Okay, it's going all the way up. 20 thousandths, that's fine. Okay, great. Good. Now I can just mirror it and we can be done. So I will select the right plane, pre-select it. You don't have to pre-select it. I just like to do that because it'll jump to it. It'll already fill in the field. Make sure it's bodies to mirror and merge is checked. So that will merge the two bodies together. You can hide the edges so you can see, so it'll look nice and smooth. If you want to change the color, you can right click on the feature and then right click on the appearance and click on that. I'm going to make this plastic color maybe like a satin finish. Change it to green. You can change it to whatever color green you like or whatever color you want. Hit check. So that concludes this tutorial. I'm going to hit save. And I hope you enjoyed it. Happy modeling.